roll. Okay. Great. Well, good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. I'm Bill Bowie. Welcome to our committee and board meetings. This evening, January 11th, 2023. I will make the requisite motion so that we can conduct these meetings virtually. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA and the Fairfax County Emergency Ordinance, the Park Authority Board needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record, as we did at our first electronic meeting. During our meeting, if you wish to be recognized, please raise your hand. And when I recognize you, please say your name. This will ensure that you are recognized and the public knows who is speaking. And if you intend to vote nay or abstain on any item, we will need to do a roll call on those votes. Because each member of this board is participating in these meetings from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all of the other members to hear. Accordingly, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each board member participating in these meetings to state your name and the location from which you are participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each one of your colleagues. And following this roll call, we will vote to establish that every member can hear every other member's voice, and we will go alphabetically. As the evening progresses, if additional board members join, I will ask to verify their audibility and their location. Okay. Dr. Edu Hooten. She's not here yet. Dr. Cynthia Jacobs Carter.
Hello, this is Cynthia Jacobs Carter, and I am participating from my home in Franconia District.
Okay. Maggie Godbold.
Hi, this is Maggie Godbold, and I'm participating from my home in the Sully District.
Linwood Gorham.
This is Linwood Gorham, and I'm participating from my home in the Mount Vernon District.
Tim Hackman.
Tim Hackman from my residence in the Drainsville District.
Faisal Khan.
Faisal Khan at my residence in Providence District.
Ken Quincy.
Ken Quincy from my residence in the Providence District.
Kyle Stone.
This is Kyle Stone joining from my home in the Braddock District.
Jim Zook. Jim Zook.
Jim, you're on mute.
Jim Zook from my home in the Springfield District.
And Mike Thompson.
Mike Thompson from my office in Alexandria.
And I'm Bill Bowie, and I'm participating from my residence in the Hunter Mill District. Ron Kendall is absent and excused this evening. At this point, I will pass the virtual gavel over to Vice Chairman Godbold so that I may be heard to make the requisite motion. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of this board.
This is Maggie Godbold. You have heard the motion. Is there a second?
This is Mike Thompson. I second the motion.
Thanks, Mike. This is Maggie Godbold. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. That motion's passes.
Thank you, Maggie. This is Bill Bowie. Second, having established that each member's voice may be heard by each other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels these emergency procedures, the fact that we are meeting electronically, what type of electronic communication is being used, and how we have arranged for public access to this meeting. Therefore, I move that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this board to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting, and that as such, FOIA's usual procedures, which require the physical assembly of this board and the physical presence of the public, cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that this board may conduct this meeting electronically via Zoom. It is so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bowie. This is Maggie Godbold. You all have heard the motion. Is there a second?
Tim Hackman, I second.
Thank you. This is Maggie again. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Mr. Chairman, the motion is approved.
Thank you very much, Maggie. This is Bill Bowie, and now we can begin our meetings. We're going to start tonight with the Resource Management Committee meeting, and I will turn it over to the chair, Kyle Stone.
Thanks, Bill. This is Kyle Stone, and I would call the Resource Management Committee to order, and we'll get started with Laura.
Great. Thank you, Kyle, and good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. Tonight, we're looking forward to presenting the accomplishments of our natural and cultural heritage programs, a portion of RMD, and their accomplishments over FY22. And some of the work that they intend to do this current fiscal year. But before I turn it over to John, Liz, and David, I wanted to take a few moments and just provide you a brief overview of our programs, each of which inventories, assesses, manages, conserves, enhances, and restores our heritage resources. So with that, if you will please go to the next slide, Allison. Talk a little bit about archaeology. I'm going to share a few pretty pictures with you, but as we know, it takes a lot of work, and archaeology is messy in terms of trying to, again, make sure that we're capturing our heritage resources here in Fairfax County. We are archaeologists. We have a team of 2 field teams that go out and actually perform the countywide responsibility for archaeology across Fairfax County. We also have a countywide responsibilities for our museum collections as well, and preserving our rich cultural heritage. The archaeology and collections branch not only maintains and preserves and protects over 12,000 years of Fairfax County heritage, they also are responsible for assisting private landowners and developers as they move forward through the zoning process or permitting processes for activities that might trigger archaeological review. These include activities that may be in the historic overlay district, as well as anything that might trigger a comprehensive plan policy review. There's also Section 106 of our Federal National Historic Preservation Act, which also requires archaeological assessments and reviews. So we are obligated to perform those investigations, at least those initial investigations, to determine whether there is a presence or absence of archaeological resources at any project site. And that includes any project site that we have within the Park Authority as well. So it's really important that we work toward the coordination of work plans across our planning and development group and our team. So right now in our museum collection, we have over 1 million artifacts, and that continues to grow with every phase 1 assessment that is done. So next slide, please. Our Heritage Conservation Branch, led by David Bukta, stewards 136 historic structures across 21 different parks. Currently, we have 27 of our properties identified for inclusion in the resident curator program, along with others that have some adaptive or creative reuse. We have 4 team members that conduct weekly investigations, support resident curator program participants, develops and reviews our historic resources and treatment plans, and implements restorative practices at these properties. We also have a Heritage Resource Volunteer Corps that is a great opportunity for our community engagement in the effort to maintain these amazing structures that we have. Next slide, please. And our Natural Resources Group is very active in the inventorying of our resources, doing plan review, volunteer engagement through our IMA program, as well as the enhancement, restoration, and creation of natural resource assets. We also, as you know, have our new Landscape Legacy program, which will support the stewardship and care of these resources in the long term. We also have a 2-person team that is going out and inventories roughly about 1,200 acres annually, and John will share quite a bit more about the work that they do. We have active management at 11 restoration sites. And we have a lot of pretty pictures that we'll be sharing, things such as our managed burns. But as we know, we have a lot of work to do in this area to suppress invasives, as well as other challenges within our urban environment. Next slide, please. Within the Resource Management Division, we've had a number of recent changes that we'll look forward to sharing more with you in the future. Certainly new leadership between me and other branch managers, new organizational structures with bringing our lakefront programs over. We survived our first pandemic, but we have a number of other countywide initiatives that are taking place, including those related to climate and energy, as well as the countywide strategic plan, which outlines a number of other initiatives. The bamboo ordinance, and then we'll be moving forward with the American Alliance of Museums reaccreditation over the coming years, and working very closely again with planning and development on the PROSA. So each project again requires our team's reviews. And we also review any projects that are non-park uses of parkland for any potential impacts, as well as mitigation or compensation for those impacts. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John, who's going to give more detail on what's happening with the Natural Resources Branch. So John.
Good evening, everyone. Pleasure to join you all. I'm going to give you all a very brief update on what's occurred in FY22 and what we hope to accomplish in FY23 within the Natural Resources Branch. Next slide, please. In FY22, the Natural Resources Branch continued our investment in the natural resources of Fairfax County Park Authority. We continue to support the tenets of our Natural Resources Management Plan through the dedicated efforts of our ecologists, volunteers, and partners. FY22, as you know, also brought a lot of change and growth, especially for the Natural Resources Branch, most notably the approval of the Landscape Legacy Program, which is our ecological maintenance program, will fund the branch to maintain its completed restorations, establish protection measures, and continue to support FCPA's long-term investment in natural capital. Next slide, please. FY22 also brought the completion of the branch's first regional scale natural resources management plan for parks in the western area of Fairfax County. With the completion of this internal guidance document comes a snapshot of ecosystem health at 54 parks and a roadmap for the management, acquisition, and protection that will feed into other ongoing planning efforts within and outside the branch. Survey work for the Western Area Natural Resource Management Plan documented many new and rare plant species and natural communities for Fairfax County, as well as many zoological surveys conducted at our parks by our staff and by key partners. Next slide, please. Our active management of park ecosystems and wildlife management continued in FY22 with ecosystem restorations under the Helping Our Land Heal program, beginning at Huntley Meadows Park, Lake Fairfax, Green Spring Gardens, and continuing at many others. We continue to improve habitat quality through continued implementation of prescribed burn on about 70 acres of grassland and forest, and the active management of white-tailed deer and Canada geese, along with the partnership project with Fairfax County Police for those efforts, also continued at full capacity now in FY22. Next slide, please. And I've got a couple quick pictures to show you all some of the work that's been underway in FY22 with our restoration program. Here you see a replanting effort at the Mayfic Barren at Elk Lick Preserve, planting oak trees. Next slide, please. Here we have the work at Huntley Meadows. This is the restoration or installation rather of ditch plugs and the establishment of a coastal plain depression swamp at Huntley Meadows, promoting the establishment of that historically flooded habitat in the park. Next slide, please. And then, of course, I always like to show off Poplar Ford. For the first time at this grassland restoration, in recent memory, at least, bobwhite quails were reported at this site. This is significant as it demonstrates that these habitat enhancements are resulting in new and returning plants and animal species to the parkland. Next slide. Stewardship efforts in FY22 continue to grow, with the IMA program returning record numbers of hours committed from resident volunteers, and many key partnerships continue to or enhanced, such as our relationship with Operation Stream Shield, which is the Public Works' environmental service to employ residents in Fairfax County homeless shelters to remove trash and pull invasive plants on public and FCPA property. OSS, Operation Stream Shield, completed 72 invasive plant removals at 14 parks this year, contributing 288 hours of support. These are all in addition to the many existing partnerships that promote and enable high quality natural resource management activities, outreach, and maintenance throughout our parks. Next slide, please. And finally, for FY23, the Natural Resource Branch is experiencing a lot of growth in the form of, again, the Landscape Legacy and Sustainability Program, as well as many other changes and challenges. We are working hard to respond to the county's new bamboo ordinance. As many of you know, we are supporting outreach efforts there, and we're also developing a prioritization protocol strategy for tackling this issue when funding is available to do so. The branch is also implementing over $100,000 in funding to face the challenge posed by the spotted lanternfly. This comes from the Virginia Forest Pest Fund by removing Tree of Heaven in 2 parks where this host plant is most prevalent, Laurel Hill and Blake Lane Park. And of course, we're wrapping up fieldwork and writing our Northern Area Natural Resource Management Plan, which is a huge endeavor. And we continue to restore parkland and service partners for larger efforts, such as the work occurring at Justice Park and other projects occurring Park Authority wide. Thank you all very much.
Thanks very much, John. Does anybody have any questions or anything they want to bring up for discussion? I don't think I see anybody. All right, that being the case, I'll turn over to Elizabeth and David to give us the update on the Cultural Resource Management Plan.
Thank you, Allison, for putting that up. I'm Liz Crowell, manager of the Archaeology and Collections Branch, and pleased to be presenting the FY22 accomplishments and FY 2023 implementation plan. Allison, next slide, please. FY 2022 was a very productive year for Archaeology and Collections Branch. Our accomplishments under inventory and planning included many partnerships and much collaboration with other organizations and within the Park Authority. We worked closely with land acquisition on the acquisition of Fairfax Arms and the Union Farm property, and are also planning an archaeological survey at Union Farm in coordination with archaeologists from Mount Vernon. Staff from Archaeology and Collections served on a team for the National Register nomination of the Pride of Fairfax Lodge in Gum Springs, which is now listed in the National Register of Historic Places. As well, we worked with the Fairfax County History Commission on the African American History Inventory, which is available for use on the History Commission's website. We conducted 291 development plan reviews as part of our county-wide responsibilities and reviewed many resulting reports. And we're continuing to compile in-field digital data collection. Next slide, please, Allison. Under our management and collection accomplishments, we completed the field work at Riverbend Park, so we will have an overall comprehensive survey of that park. As well, we worked with the Park Authority Planning and Development Division with both the archaeology and the cemeteries at Patriot Park, including their protection and interpretation. As far as our collections responsibilities go, we continued planning for the proposed collections facility. And a large accomplishment for this year was that we were able to deaccession archaeological collections from Fort Belvoir, and that was 216 boxes of artifacts, another approximately 40 boxes of documentation, and 4 crates of things that could have potentially gone boom. and those have been sent for relocation to Fort Lee. We even had the bomb squad out to ensure that they were not actually live, although we were pretty certain they weren't. And we're continuing our efforts towards the proposed collections facility. Moving on, next slide, please, Allison. And our stewardship education initiatives include partnering with various organizations, including friends groups, boards and commissions, historical and archaeological organizations, federal, state, and local agencies, and the American Alliance of Museums. We provide content for a variety of outlets on social media on historical topics and make presentations at symposia and local, state, and regional conferences. And we also, as you'll see in a lot of our slides, we spend a good deal of time interpreting archaeology to the interested public. Again, for FY23, our work is well underway at this point. Next slide, please. Inventory and planning efforts include coordination with the County Department of Planning and Development on an African American resource inventory survey, a draft of which I was reviewing just prior to this meeting. As well, we're assisting with a heritage resource survey of Gum Springs. Again, another initiative that we have is that archaeology staff is implementing a countywide cemetery survey. And for those who might be interested, Amy Wells will be making a presentation on this effort at our annual symposium at Gunston Hall on March 4th. Next slide, please. Our management and protection efforts for 2023 include the completion of the analysis and report for the archaeology I previously mentioned at Riverbend Park. We've also worked closely with the Heritage Conservation Branch and provide archaeological services in support of the resident curator program, including a current effort at Leahy Lost Valley. Other upcoming projects for archaeology include investigations at Fairfax Arms, as well as a number of other locations. Staff assisted the Gum Springs Historical Society in the preparation of a collections assessment program grant application. And we heard yesterday that Gum Springs has been awarded that grant, so we're very pleased with that. As well, we continue to update our GIS and computerized documentation of archaeological resources. And Laura mentioned the American Alliance of Museum effort. We kicked off a meeting for the upcoming reaccreditation earlier this week, so we're moving forward with that. Next slide, please. Our stewardship plans for 2023 include a number of things. We just completed monitoring for interpretive signs that were installed at Sully along a newly designed interpretive trail. We're continuing to work with the Fairfax County History Commission on their history conference, and this year will be their 19th annual history conference. As well, we participate with our friends group and with Gunston Hall on an annual symposium that's held every spring at Gunston Hall. And our staff continues to represent archaeology and history at local events. We participate in local, state, and national conferences, and then continue to support the History Commission and the ARB, and continue to provide content that supports the One Fairfax initiative. Does anyone have any questions? And I apologize for going so fast.
Okay. It looks like it's my turn to discuss the Heritage Conservation Branch. I'm David Bukta, and good evening to all the board members and people joining us this evening. We have much the same goals and objective in the Cultural Resource Plan as the Archaeology and Collections Branch. So I will go over the highlights of the Heritage Conservation Branch and some of our accomplishments this year and what we're targeting next year. So obviously our biggest program that we have in Heritage Conservation Branch is the Resident Curator Program. We now have 4 leased properties and 3 of those are under rehabilitation. Of course, the Stimson House has been underway for some time. Turner Farmhouse, the Hannah P. Clark House, and the Elmore Farmhouse was signed this year, or last year actually. We continue to track expenses for all the properties, review the projects ongoing, and conduct annual maintenance inspections at all sites. To date, we have $650,000 of curator investment put back into the 4 sites. By the end of this year, when we add the Elmore Farmhouse work, we'll be at over $1 million. So that's our biggest achievement that we can report this year. Next slide, please. So these are just some before and after pictures. This is at Turner Farmhouse, the Milk House, which is one of the ancillary structures there. This was really just a very dilapidated structure, and the curator there took it upon herself to replace the windows and doors, repaint it. There's a new roof on it, and it's now ADA accessible, and she uses it as a spot of reflection for her upcoming retreat center. So it was an unused building, and we really didn't have great plans for it, but she certainly made it into something special. And as you can see, there's a new deck on the back of the house that's also ADA accessible and provides a wonderful spot to look at the countryside there. Next slide, please. Here we see at the Clark and Yeti House in Lorton that in the basement, the curator installed some new support posts to support the original timber framing in that explorer joint there. And you can see those are peeled logs, which are rare to find in a structure of this period. At the Stimson House, again, another deck repair, but this was actually mostly added. So again, provides a nice spot on the back of the house and makes the property look much more attractive. Next slide, please. So we are currently reviewing the White Gardens House in Annandale for the Resident Curator Program, and we'll be making some decisions on that later this year. We continue to receive many inquiries on the Lamond House in Alexandria, and we're still looking at options for how that can best be utilized. It's a wonderful property that we need to get someone into. And actually, also this year, we completed 2 energy efficiency projects at the Ash Grove House and White Gardens House, where we did some window restoration and also installed insulation as well as interior storm windows on both properties. Next slide, please. As Liz mentioned in some of her accomplishments, we did participate with the Park Authority on the Fairfax Arms purchase, and we are underway on HSR, which are historic structure report and treatment plans on not only that site, but the Union Farm site as well. Those are going to be looked at for potential resident curator properties. We also have acquired the Marybrook Radcliffe House in Centerville and Herndon, and that's going to be a historic structure plan in calendar year 23. Next couple of months, we'll start that one. We have a big project underway at Drainsville Tavern. We had significant termite and water damage there, so we're restoring the roof, putting a new roof on it, and we've done one whole wall that was completely damaged by termites. And we're currently in the second phase of that project, which will finish in the spring. And as Liz mentioned, we are working with the Archaeology and Collections branch on the Leahy Lost Valley house in Vienna because there is a significant water intrusion situation in the basement there. Next slide, please. So we have some targets for the resident curator program in FY23. The Mount Gilead House, which is now vacant. We're preparing for the resident curator in Q2 of this calendar year. The waterproofing project I mentioned at Leahy Lost Valley. We're looking at re-advertising Ash Grove as well as the Barrett House in Lorton. We will complete the Elmhurst Farmhouse rehabilitation. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll surpass $1 million of total resident curator investment in the program. Next slide, please. We also have, as Laura mentioned, our Historic Site Volunteer Corps. We had several events this year, all of which were successful. We've got some pictures there of some work that was done at Union Farm as well as Fairfax Arms. And as of November 22, we had over 50 volunteers with over 150 hours into the projects. Next slide, please. So as far as our FY23 plans, we have a pretty exciting project that we're working on with the National Park Service. They have a group called the Historic Preservation Training Center, which is in Maryland. And we're working on a MOA with them to work on some of our sites, Sully, Green Spring, Colvin Run, our premier sites. And the way this would work is that they have established masonry people, contractors, architects, and they're all trained in historic preservation. So this is something the Park Authority does not have access to currently, and is very difficult for us to maintain quality vendors to do work. They will also train our existing park operations staff on how to do some of this small projects. So we wouldn't even have to contract a lot of things out that we do now. So we're very excited about this opportunity to really elevate some of the work that we're doing at our historic sites. We continue to work with many other county agencies, planning and development, as well as obviously the Archaeology and Collections.
Where you started talking. There we go. Could you repeat what you said?
Sure can. I'll ask one more time if there are any questions or discussions for either the resource management plan presentation that Liz and David just gave, or if anybody has anything for John on the natural resource plan from earlier. Otherwise, seeing nothing, we'll go ahead and adjourn the Resource Management Committee.
Thank you, Kyle. And so we are not on with our board meeting until 7 o'clock. Good evening and welcome to the January 11th, 2023 meeting of the Park Authority Board. Everyone is here this evening with the exception of Ron Kendall and Abena Edu Houghton, who have excused absences this evening. We start all of our meetings with a public comment period. We will have a new person that we're dealing with tonight in terms of introducing any public speakers. I'd like to introduce Ben Boxer for the first time on this presentation. Ben, what do you got for us? You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Thank you. I had one job to do. My name is Ben Boxer. I'm the new Public Information Officer for the Fairfax County Park Authority. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. Mr. Chairman, we have no speakers signed up to speak this evening.
Okay. Thanks, Ben. I appreciate it. All right, so we'll go on and proceed on with administrative items. Countywide admin item number 1 is the adoption of the minutes of the December 14th, 2022 Park Authority Board meeting.
Thank you for making that motion, Mr. Chair. This is Maggie Godbold. I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries. On to information items countywide. The information item number 1 is the annual capital improvement plan with a presentation. Jay?
I am here. Give me 1 second. If you can bring it up for me. Thank you very much. So today we wanted to present what we have presented as our needs for the 2026 bond. I'm just going to get right into it. This is our proposal to the county. Next slide. So first we wanted to go through some of the projects that we have are working on currently. So this is a concept plan for Mount Vernon Woods Park redevelopment. Next slide. This is Burke Lake Marina improvements project that is in construction. Next slide. As hopefully you all know, we have Mount Vernon Rec Center construction project that we are completely renovating the Mount Vernon Rec Center. More details on that to follow. Next slide. Sully Woodlands Education Center project is a project we're very, very excited about. It's going to do wonders for that community, and it's going to be beautiful to boot. Next slide. And we have the Bird property demo. So this is, we're kind of hitting all of the categories and just showing some of the ways that we utilize our CIP dollars. And some of that is in demolishing improvements on properties once we acquire them. This one is just adjacent to Lake Fairfax Park. Next slide. So in addition to projects that we have that are planned for in the 2020 bond, things always come up that we need to handle or tackle. So this is just a little bit of a sprinkling of some projects that we have done or are doing that aren't explicitly stated in the 2020 bond. So McNaughton, the Pemmit Run Trail, Coven Run Trail we're looking at, Sugarland Run Bridge, pickleball everywhere. When athletic field light projects come up, another example is the TPE at Great Falls Nike, garden plots at Laurel Hill, Fairchild Quander. Those are all projects that come up throughout the year that we we tackle and utilize some of our CIP dollars for. Next slide. So let's get into the 2026 bond. We have a 2020 bond, so 2026 bond. I refer you back when we were talking about CIP, that the county is going from a 4-year bond cycle to a 6-year bond cycle. So our next bond would be in 2026, and the one after that would be 2032. Next slide. So this is our previous bond amounts and categories. We just wanted to run you through our 2012, 2016, and 2020 bond amounts for the current categories that we are utilizing. So new park development, renovations and upgrades, land acquisition and stewardship, land acquisition, and natural and cultural resources. And next slide. So we're making a couple of edits to our bond categories. One of them is, instead of saying new park development, we're calling it new park and facility development, with 2 subcategories, one being major projects and one subcategory being minor new construction. We'll go over some examples of that in a second. Instead of just renovations, we are calling it repairs and renovations, which is really hitting all of our deferred maintenance. That encapsulates all of what it takes to manage 420 parks and all of the facilities that are included in there. And then land acquisition and natural and cultural resources. Next slide. So as a reminder, we are working on our PROSA plan, Park Recreation Open Space and Access Plan. And the idea here is, again, to identify gaps in the 10-minute walk to park, see where we have holes in both experiences and in parkland. Analyze habitat connectivity, so we're factoring in that natural resources portion of things, and then prioritize needs and projects with an equity lens. A lot of more things are going to come out of that. This is really the data portion of everything. And if you go to the next slide, we will be utilizing a equity lens in determining those gaps and prioritizing where we have gaps in service and gaps in parks. And that will, all of those data will help to inform our 2026 bond list. Other factors that will be included into that is population density, and then being able to provide an equitable CIP strategy across the entire county. So that will factor in supervisory districts. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, there we go. So repair and replacement. That is, as I said before, what it takes to maintain all of these 420 parks, 8 golf courses, 334 miles of trails, 228 playgrounds, 252 athletic courts. It's how we continue with the promises that we made to the community when we first built the playground, and it reaches the end of its life cycle and we have to replace it, or there's a pothole on a trail. We have parking lot repavements, redoing tennis courts, redoing basketball courts. It's really, if we did not grow at all, and we did everything incrementally and not as a full park replacement, what would it take to maintain a world-class park system? And next slide. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to build up from our CIP to how we got to our number. I just want to say, again, we're going from a 4-year to a 6-year CIP. And so what we did to figure out these numbers was we just took our 4-year to 6-year CIP cycle, 4-year CIP cycle, extrapolated across 6 years. So we're not asking for more money in these categories. This is just what it costs to do the same level of service for the next 6 years. So CIP planning, CIP plan baseline repairs and renovations. I'm sorry, this is in my way. Repairs and renovations at $60 million over 6 years. That's $10 million per year. Next slide. Adding land acquisition, which is $10.5 million. Next slide. Adding new park facilities. So we're separating out the new park facilities and new parks and facilities. So this could be a renovation, a full-on renovation of an existing park with amenities, or when we acquire a piece of parkland, building it from scratch. So this 18 million encapsulates 6 new park projects. So we'd have 6 projects within the 6-year span of like Mount Vernon Woods, Hope Park, those types of parks would fall into that category. And then there's minor new construction, which is when we want to add something new to a park that perhaps already exists. So the categories for that would be if we wanted to build a new skate park, or we wanted to build a new playground or a new picnic shelter, that would come under that category. Next slide. Added $8 million for natural and cultural resources. We just had really phenomenal presentations from both our natural and our cultural resources groups. A lot of people don't recognize that we spend a lot of CIP dollars on those 2 programs. Not a lot, we spend CIP dollars on those 2 programs. Next slide. Okay, so what that does is it builds up our CIP baseline. So that's what's in the bag. So that gets us to a certain number. That's $100 million. It gets us to $100 million over the CIP. Now we have to start putting in those big rocks into the bag. And those are the 3 projects that you see here. So next slide. Okay, so Audrey Moore, everybody knows that that's going to be our priority first project that we're going to get in the 2026 bond. We're doing Mount Vernon Rec Center. This bond, next bond, the moment that we get the money, we're planning on being able to go to construction on Audrey Moore Rec Center. We're estimating that to be $60 million. Next slide. Providence and Franconia, those two rec centers are less of a full-blown renovation like you would see at Audrey Moore and Mount Vernon, and they're more of a smaller renovation, but even our smaller renovations are for these larger facilities are about at $25 million a pop. So adding Providence and Franconia, if we wanted to do those, would add another 50 million. Next slide. That takes the bag of what we think that we need for next year to include all of those projects, as well as being able to make sure that we hold our repairs and renovations, because we're in an aging park system and we really need to be holding that number, if not increasing it. And then leaving room for new park projects, and obviously having to fulfill our mission with natural and cultural resources. And land we're not making new land anymore. So we really need to be focusing at least these next 2 decades on being able to acquire what's left out there that needs to be either conserved or used to provide recreational amenities to our residents. That gets us to 209.5 million. And that's what we went and said, this is what we think our needs are for the 2026 bond. Now I'll caveat that with the next slide, which is that this is all that's not accounted for yet. So South Run, about $5 million of needs there. Trails for new trails, about $10 million. Adventure playground, we've been talking about providing another adventure playground in the county, a destination playground. Riverbend Visitor Center, if we wanted to do another sports tourism facility like Patriot North. This doesn't include the remainder of the collections facility and anything else that PROSA is going to come up with as defined needs. That's all still outside of the bag, although this is just what we're proposing would make up the $209.5 million. Next slide. So this is it in a snapshot of repairs and renovations, and it gives you some examples. Again, that includes rec center system replacements that we know are at a high dollar value, irrigation systems for fields, playground replacements. We are looking at our playgrounds in a little bit of a different way to build better, larger playgrounds to serve our constituents. You know, new land opportunities in rapidly urbanizing areas are more expensive than they used to be. So land acquisition at 10.5 million. Natural and cultural resources. You saw the presentations. A lot of what was presented is covered through the CIP project program. New parks and facilities. That also includes Maston Brook grants, as well as the new community parks and minor new construction, picnic shelters, new trails, and then major new facilities. So that's the biggest chunk of this bond with Audrey Moore, Franconia, and Providence Rec Center refreshes.
Kyle, you got a question?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. This is Kyle.
Oh, sorry, I can't see that thing. Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt, so I just thought I'd throw that.
This is literally just one more slide, so you're fine.
Let's go to since you're done, and this was for like 6 slides back, just finish up and.
Oh, okay. Next, I think we're on one slide. Next slide. Yes, okay. So next step, we're continuing our talks with Department of Management and Budget. Again, the baseline expanding from 4 years to 6 years. Additional projects funded entirely in this bond. The 209 million is just what we presented. It isn't a guaranteed amount. We are expecting and very hopeful that we'll get more than 150, and 150 would be our 2020 bond extrapolate out to 6 years. So we think that we are hopeful that we'll get more, you know, probably less than 209.5, so somewhere in the middle. We'll find that out on February the 21st. We'll also find out what we got in our the county executive's recommended operating budget. So we'll be coming back, I believe the next day actually is the next board Park Authority board member meeting, and we will present what was recommended from the county executive for both the CIP and the operating budget. And with that, I will take your question. Kyle?
All right, Kyle Stone, going back to your first bag of rocks slide towards the beginning of the presentation. Yeah, So the 4 groups that are in there, how do those, I guess, percentages of the bigger amount, like if they were in a 4-year bond cycle, are they roughly the same as what we've been spending? Are they one significantly more or less?
They are roughly the same as what we're currently spending. 'Cause the currently, I'm referring to the 2020 bond, because we also have a big one in the 2020 in Mount Vernon. In best case scenario, all of these rec centers are done. We would be spending more on that current bag of rocks. We would be doing more than 6 park projects. We would be doing more, but we have to, right now it's about 45%, 47% of the total ask of 209 is that current bag of rocks. And then the big projects are making up roughly half, a little bit more than half, just as Mount Vernon made up a little bit more than half of 2020.
Of 2020s. Okay. So it's roughly the same kind of picture as we looked at in 2020, just bigger overall numbers because it's now a 6-year bond.
Yes, and it looks like it's a very large number because of the Audrey Moore number and the Franconia and the Providence number, they're large projects, so.
And then trails, you kind of had as one of the, we don't have identified for, have we not been, I should probably know the answer to this, but have we not been putting money in?
So currently trails would be in that minor new construction category, but
Okay.
in the priorities, we're looking at playgrounds a little different. We really need to be expanding our trails program and our trails plan and building more trails and really expanding that program and having a separate pot of money that's dedicated to trails. Right now, trails are really competing with everything else in that minor new construction category.
Okay, so if because that 10 million in trail construction is on the outside of the bag, is that not part of the bond proposal as of yet?
It is not. We did not include an uptick in a non-rec center world, not non-rec. In a rec centers are all renovated and don't need to be spending half of our CIP dollars on it. We would absolutely uptick the amount of money that we're spending on trails. We would absolutely uptick and have probably a separate category. We would absolutely uptick acquisitions. There's a lot of places where we need to be moving forward, and yes.
Let me clarify this. Is trails not part of the 2026 bond proposal, or 2026 bond proposal, or is it right now embedded into minor new construction and just competing?
That's it.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, I'm done. Thank you.
Linwood,
So has this already been taken across the street?
It has been proposed across the street for consideration.
Why wasn't it brought to us before it was taken across the street?
Because we needed to, at the time that we were taking it across the street, we had no idea what the breadth of all the other county agencies were doing. And so they asked us roughly, what do you need? So this was a roughly, what do we need? The bags that we're representing and the specific amounts, we had to utilize some sort of calculation to get to a rough estimate of what we need. They're not funding each.
Yeah, but you also, you already listed things that aren't included in this. And I mean, I'll bring up one more that I didn't see. And, you brought up the museum storage facility, but those 2 fields that were funded in the last bond that were taken off to pay for the rec center, I didn't see those put back in here. And, they've got an element of equity and everything being cricket fields or being able to be used as cricket fields. So clearly they're a priority to go back in there. But I got to tell you, the $200 million price range, that's just status quo. I mean, I'm just run the numbers. 6 years is 150. And what's the inflation in 6 years right now? It's way over 25%. I mean, it's like almost 10% a year right now. So this is absolutely treading water. This is not moving forward at all. We need to move forward with this kind of stuff. This is not a big enough ask.
So let me go back, because I apologize for not making it really clear as to how we created the bag. When we have the 209, obviously everything that we have in there, we haven't voted, we haven't taken anything to the public, we haven't taken anything to you guys. We all know we've been
I think everybody understood how the bags got filled and what's in the bags and everything else. That was pretty clear. Your bag presentation is good. Just the total amount asked for and the individual items in the bags, they're not big enough. Again, we need to move forward. I mean, that's how we got so far behind with our rec centers right now. Anyway, it's a status quo ask. It is not a move forward ask.
Ken Quincy?
Just sort of a follow-up on what Ken Quincy, a follow-up on some of Linwood's comments. Just how are the effects of inflation addressed in these projections?
So Audrey Moore, the large projects, we projected inflation and we're designing for a lower number than the 60 million to adjust for it being a $60 million project when we come in 2026. The other ones are same thing with Franconia and Providence. The idea is to get to a number and then figure out the rocks through this process. So if we want to take out Franconia district or Providence and spend $25 million someplace else, but we needed to give them some sort of an idea of a realm of which we're talking about.
No, but I was just curious. I mean, I assume we're using $2023 or $2022. We're not.
No, we adjust for, so when we're talking about the numbers for Audrey Moore, that's not a $60 million project right now. That's a $60 million project in 2026.
Okay.
So we adjust for inflation to make it, let's say it's a $50 million project designed right now. What would it be in 2026? And then we adjust for inflation, and that was our estimate. But we have no idea what inflation is going to do between now and 2026.
Right.
So it's going to impact our bond and our ask, because we're going to have to finish Audrey Moore and take it from someplace.
No, I'm just curious how you work inflation in, because it will have an impact. Yes. Thank you, Jay.
Yeah, this is Bill Bowie. I mean, this is trying to catch Jello with a fork. It requires having a placeholder right now. This will be reevaluated and rediscussed next year again. And so we're shooting at a moving target, but this is the initial placeholder. But we will certainly have the discussions this year, next year, and the year after, prior to the bond being put in place. The financial condition of the county may have changed by then. That will allow us to do more. So we need to keep that in consideration, knowing that what we're asking for now is going to change one way or another. There's nothing in concrete about this. Even if they come back and say you got 209, we're not guaranteed to get 209. That's what they're going to tell us for this year, for CIP purposes only. So please keep that in mind.
But also, you start high when you're negotiating. We should be on the moon right now and be talking back down from the moon.
I think if you were to talk across the street, that number is super high.
But logic says it's just not.
We're not going to go to the logic thing.
I believe Mike has his hand up.
Mike.
Thanks. Jay, couple of questions. First of all, this is a placeholder presentation that you've made for across the street. This is not this is not the document which we've typically done, where we go through and we say, what do we think it should be? And we have this detailed analysis of projects and we go back and forth. And okay, recognizing that, Mike, a couple concerns, couple of thoughts. Not all of them are concerns. One, I have no doubt that across the street thinks 200 million is the moon plus a couple of solar systems. But one, a couple of years ago, we brought in consultants. They met with every member of the Board of Supervisors at the time. We did all this stuff on the rec centers. Spent all this time about and these economic charts about the fact that if we did not invest heavily in all of the rec centers, all about the same time, to get them all up on the market and everything else, we were going to go from a net positive financial situation with the rec centers to a net negative situation with rec centers. And at the time, the Board of Supervisors was like, yeah, we understand, we get it. One, we've had a few members of the Board of Supervisors change, I believe, since that happened. But if we don't think that economic reality accurately reflects where we are now, that somehow we're going to be net positive longer or something, that changes things. But it seems to me that at the forefront of the conversation needs to be this issue with the rec centers, that they cost a lot of money to build, they cost a lot of money to maintain. There were a lot of reasons why they were put together. We face a situation where there are conversations about how to make them more accessible to the community in a way that would make them less economically efficient for us to run them. And we're still having to pour lots of dollars into them. And Mr. Bowie probably would like the Bill Bowie Rec Center named after him at some point, somewhere in his district, since there, as he points out regularly, there isn't one. Where are we taking that entire rec center conversation? Where does that fit in the economic analysis of what we're doing with bonds? Is that separate? Is it a separate body? What's the thought process?
I
So,
think
there are separate conversations going on that are not a part of this. And every time I have the chance, sitting down with the county executive and the chair, I continue to bring up the fact that we need $250 to $300 million in a separate bond altogether to take the rec centers off the table, because that is really makes this number more palatable. But I couldn't agree with you more. We're having those conversations, and again, we're gonna see changes this year again in the Board of Supervisors. So we're gonna have to re-engage in delivering that story.
Now, right, but let me so something to think about when we're going through that is that it's not just that if we're going to continue to run the rec centers and meet the community needs and do all the other stuff, that we need that chunk of money. We also need the ability to get access to the money, to spend the money, and do the projects. Having a separate bond for $250 million, $300 million, $1 billion, whatever number that we magically come up with, plus our regular bond, doesn't open up the bandwidth of money the county can make available to us because of the way that the bond office makes dollars available. So one of my concerns is that we have kind of two tracks here, and both tracks seem to want to maximize the use of the money that's available, when we know that that's not really a possibility unless something changes across the street. And so I think that you're right. You know, yes, we need to think through that separate bond. Yes, we have to think through what goes here, but we better be having the conversations now about how those dollars how we get access to those dollars. Or let's say that both bonds are there at 2026, both get passed with 85% margins. In 2028 or so, somebody across the street's going to be, you guys can't spend all your money. You don't need to be on a 6-year cycle. You need to be on a 10-year cycle. We're going to be back to trying to figure this out. And so one, we can't lose track of the rec centers, but two, we have to be thinking and strategizing now about how we get access to them to use the money we know we need. So that's one major concern, Jay, that I don't know how you solve it. I don't.
Well, I think that one of the I think that one of the important things, and we talk about rec centers a lot, and we're trying to talk about everything else and what the, it's hard to talk about impact when you're talking about something that's so important to the community and access to healthy lifestyles and pools and recreation. So it is critical to, I think, the residents of the county, our recreation program. But the fact is, when we spend, no matter what the CIP is, when we spend 50 to 55% of the CIP on the rec centers, it does look at the other side of the balloon. And if you counted how many new park projects there aren't enough new park projects to go around to every district, right? So there's not enough projects to go around. So at a point when we're talking about, can I get this in? Can I get this in? The answer is no, I can't. I mean, we have to figure out how to make it with what it is that they give us, understanding that we're spending this huge chunk on rec centers because we have to do them.
I totally agree. And I mean, and they're a big chunk of cost. They're a big chunk of what we do. And we have to be careful that it doesn't overshadow of the 100 projects we do, one might be rec centers. They're expensive. But there are 99 other things that we have to take care of, whether it's protecting our cultural history, whether it's fighting invasive species, whether it's doing the deer cultivation. I mean, we can go on and on and on, and we haven't even taken care of all of our lakefront parks the way that in our perfect world we'd like to. But I think that while we're thinking through, I guess my point of the first question is, we have to think through not just how we get money approved, but how we get access to and the ability to spend the money in order to achieve our goals. We can wave the magic wand and get as much authorized as we want, but if we're only getting the $20 million a year or whatever it is, we're only going so far.
And we're having all of those conversations. That's part of we're having a lot of conversations with DMB about that.
Okay. My second concern / issue with the presentation is that by putting specific projects in a presentation that goes from us across the street, it to a certain extent begins to socialize and create the expectation that those are the projects that are going to be done. And that's a process that certainly the board hasn't hammered out, but also it's 3.5 years away before we vote on, before it goes to the voters. And there's a lot that can change. And I think it's really important that we figure out how to make it clear, not only across the street, but to all of those constituents, all of those residents of Fairfax County, who over the course of the next given amount of time might be exposed directly or indirectly to this presentation or to people talking about what might have been in it, that we not create the expectation that these are the programs that are going to happen, that, in 2026 or 2027, whatever's in the little bag that's in the big bag of rocks, that whatever is going to be solved.
And let me just really quickly apologize, because at the beginning, I don't think I made it really clear enough that we worked our way up to a number, and this was the methodology by which we shot a number out. Across the street fully understands that this is not in any way program. What we did was we took exactly what we got last year and added the rec center study of what was up for this year. And we just added those two together to right size the bond. We absolutely made it very clear that what happens, it could be 3 times as much for cultural resource. That is all up to our board when we're having conversations, but in some way to get the camel's nose under the tent, because they're in conversations with everybody, we had to, put them on notice that we're, quite frankly, going larger than, don't schedule us for $100 million. Like we have to start having this conversation. So we will make sure that this is the last presentation that we're doing. We're just showing you how we got to the 209. When we come back to show what it is that we received, it will not be with any, that means that this is out or this is in or whatever it is. This is our starting off point for the number. We fill the bag however the board would like us to fill the bag.
And then my third, and what I think is my final thought process in this is the across the street pushed you to get this done. I get it. You had to get the camel's nose under the tent. You had to get them answers, whatever. Looking at what the process they're going to go through as they're figuring out the different bond schedules and how big and small and everything else. You may not know the answer to this yet. Can you help me understand by what time is the decision going to be made? Not just in a final decision stamped and done, but the practical decision making for how big our bond may be. Is that a year from now, 6 months from now, 18 months from now?
I think the first flush is February. And so when that exact question coming up, knowing that we were coming to talk to the board, is that in talking to DMB, we're hopeful that they will come on into the February 21st meeting to answer questions about how they arrived at and what their process is and where we fit into the whole county. Because I don't know. I won't know. Like, if they give us a number, I have no idea if every other department got $14 billion and we got this, or did everybody else get $5 and we got it. You guys need to understand the perspective of where we sit in the county. So we're hoping that they'll come and, sort of answer those questions as how they got to it and what their process is between now and the finalization of the numbers.
So I'm sorry, they're going to come in February, or they're going to be finalized in February and come explain to us how they got there?
We're going to get a number. And Mike, I don't know if I'm describing this correctly, so please jump in if I'm lying. They're going to propose a county executive proposed CIP, which is sort of just like the operating budget is the beginning to the conversation. That'll come out the day before, and then the day after we will come and show you what was in that package and FCPAs for FCPA. We're hoping that they come to that February 22nd board meeting to explain how they arrived at that number, and then what's the next steps between now and any finalization of that.
That's correct, Jay. This is Michael Peter, Division Director for Administration. That's correct. We are expecting the overall slices of the pie to be proposed by the county executive on February 21, and we have invited DMB leadership to come to our meeting on the 22nd to discuss, provide context, and answer questions.
I'm sorry, Michael, when you say slices of the pie, by that, do you mean the piece of the overall bonding authority we get?
Yes.
What do you mean by, okay.
Yeah, that's correct, Mike. That's correct.
Okay, so Bill, I would note that all of us probably need to be talking to our supervisors over the course of the next 2.5 weeks, because it's hard to make a major change to whatever they propose the day of a meeting across the street.
I would think so, Mike, that might be good, but I don't know if the Board of Supervisors is going to see this.
They do not. This is the county executive's proposed budget.
This is the county executive's proposal.
Right, but I tend to believe that even the county executive listens to supervisors before the formal meeting process.
Not on this, he doesn't.
Not on this. He won't.
Great.
They won't engage.
Okay.
Ken had his hand up, and then Tim. Ken?
No, I just had a question following some of Mike's comments regarding the access to funds along the way. Have we had problems in the past, or maybe you can refresh my memory about accessing bond funds?
We had some cash flow issues with the 2020 bond that we work with DMB to work out to get us to the 2026 bond. I think that more of what he's referring to in access is we can't necessarily just go out there and say we want to float a $400 million bond and the brokers vote for it. We still have to work into the puzzle piece of the entirety of what the county's bond budget is. So the county puts out a $1 billion, budget. figuring out how many the slices of the pie. What can happen possibly is we can get more. Another county would either get less or at what they ask for, but what's not on the table is increasing. We have very little ability right now to really increase that capacity for the whole.
Oh, no, I realize
county.
that.
Yeah. Sorry, Sarah.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, Sarah Baldwin, Deputy Director. I think, all the board members know for years we've been advocating to increase our annual cash flow. And I think that's also a significant part of the conversation that, we're limited in terms of what we can do annually by that 20 or 25 million that we have the ability to spend. And we know with the 26 bond and even currently, we could be doing a lot more if we had additional cash to spend on an annual basis.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you, sir.
And if I could just add to that, Mr. Quincy, part of the this is Mike Peter again, Division Director for Administration. Part of the calculations, as Jay was saying, as we were building up to that 209.5 is also trying to have some realistic understanding of what those cash flow limitations would be going forward. So yeah, it wouldn't matter if we had $1 billion on the books. If we can't spend more than $30 million a year and we have 10 years to spend bond money, then we get right into another issue there as well. So there'll be a lot of conversation about cash flow as there was for the Mount Vernon project.
Okay, thank you.
Tim?
Thank you, Bill. Tim Hackman. I don't disagree, and in fact agree with much of what my other board colleagues have said. Nevertheless, and I'm not sure that Mike Thompson's question about when is the bond amount going to be fully settled. I think Bill had addressed that most accurately. When we're talking about CIP, as I understand it, we're talking about a rolling every fiscal year, 5-year CIP, projected CIP plan that the county puts together. So we are looking now at the FY24 and following 4 or 5 years CIP package. And as Bill correctly pointed out, that will be revised again next fiscal year, revised again the following fiscal year, and adopted that following fiscal year when we have our park bond. When in that process, that number is going to start to solidify, which I think was Mike's question. I don't know the answer to that, but we clearly have some flexibility and some timing there to our advantage to try to get that number, which I think we all feel is at this point, perhaps less than we need, enhanced. So I just wanted to clarify that. I think these are all good questions and a worthwhile discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. It'll probably be sometime in the spring of 2025, calendar year 2025. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not quite sure where to begin. First, a question, I guess, to Jay. I didn't catch the number that was in the bag that was set aside for PROSA. Was there an actual number in that, and how much was it?
It just said question mark as to what PROSA will evolve to show us that we need. We don't know that number yet because we don't have PROSA done.
Okay.
So that's a question mark of a number.
I appreciate that. That takes me to, I guess, a comment that was made, and correct me if I heard it wrong, that within the current proposal, there's really not enough money to do a project in every district.
A new park?
Well, I heard a project.
Well, no. So we have money in minor new construction, and we have money, in our repairs and renovations. So the normal playground replacement, but I'm talking large,
Right. Okay.
Mount Vernon Woods, Hogue Park, large Sully Woodlands Education Center, the large projects, we backed in about 18 million at $3 million each for a major park renovation.
Okay. I'm really thinking about PROSA, and with the dollars and with the notion that we are dealing with a 6-year ask, and with none of that, and it may be dedicated, but it doesn't seem to me how, to what we might find our needs coming out of our analysis to build parks, make renovations in areas that we determine are underserved. I just ask that the board think about that. I don't know what we do about that, but it appears to me that if we're really serious about moving the needle forward with regard to proximity of opportunities to communities in need, that there doesn't appear to be on the surface anything to me in the 6-year program that does anything with regard to capital improvements, other than perhaps maybe minor improvements to parks or to playgrounds and other maybe trails and areas that are accessible. The other thing that I guess I'd like to mention is when we talk about a 10-minute walk to facilities, a couple questions come to my mind, and that is, what facilities, and are they the kind of facilities that are needed by the target population? And I know that's probably something that's going to be looked at in the planning of that. Having said that, some of the more I guess remote areas of the county that are not urbanized and are not poor, so I'll just refer to the Occoquan area, where the county has different standards with regard to proximity to facilities. For example, if I'm out in Clifton, I might not have access to a library within the 30-minute period. And that's appropriate because, well, that may not be appropriate, but it is reality, because those folks that are out there have the ability to go to a library whenever they want to go to the library. Now, flip that around to some of our underserved areas and the various park facilities that they would like to accommodate, or we'd like to have them available for them to accommodate. And then the question to me then is, it's going to be very difficult to provide those facilities within a 10-minute walk. So what is it that we need to be thinking about to provide something that is a little bit different, but similar in reverse? We've heard about libraries and library mobiles and those kinds of things going to underserved areas. I think maybe one of the things we need to think about are park mobiles that may be in our future to move children to places of their interest. And we may be doing some of that now. I'm not aware of it if we are, but I would just ask that reverse kind of service be considered when we're doing PROSA, because I fear that the kind of facilities that we would like to provide in areas of need are going to be well, first of all, they're not provided in a 6-year period. Secondly, they're going to be very expensive to provide in any case, because you're talking about massive land acquisition, perhaps of commercial properties, at exorbitant prices. However you might want to sort those out at a later point in time, I don't need a response right now. I'd appreciate you all thinking about it.
I can give you one really good response right now, is which is one of the reasons, exactly what you said is one of the reasons why we included in our operating budget ask for a mobile nature center, because we're not going to be able to quickly provide nature and activities for for children and people in everywhere. So how do we bring our services to communities as opposed to relying on communities to be able to get to all of our services? That was the basis behind the Mobile Nature Center budget ask that we asked for. It's a really important aspect of things, of being able to basically create a pop-up park in a parking lot where people can have access to those things. To your PROSA question really quickly, I can tell you that's why population is a huge factor in looking at distance. You can have not a 10-minute walk shed, but 10 people who live there, and not a 10-minute walk shed and 100,000 people live within that walk shed. So looking at population and prioritizing those 6 projects that we are that we highlighted in the will be prioritized through the PROSA plan. So they're not set in stone. We have no idea what those are. We need to get PROSA and see, and then prioritize based on population, equity, access to parks, all of those things to create that list of however many projects that we're talking about doing.
Okay, thanks,
Yeah.
Jay.
And to complicate things even more, to realize that this is like catching Jello with a fork, is the fact that there will probably be at least 2 new supervisory districts in 2030. And that's going to complicate things even further based on population, like Jay said, and dispersion of resources across the county. So we've got that kind of thing to look forward to as well. All right.
And
Anything else?
we'll make our entire area planning overlays that much more difficult to explain to the supervisors.
Exactly. Okay, anything more on this? All right. Countywide information item number 2, update on the Maston Brook Fund Grant Program. We had that already, so that's all good. Chairman's Matters. Happy New Year. Welcome back. There's a lot that went on. There were a lot of retirement parties. This is our first meeting without Judy and the crew. It's an exciting time, but at the same time, there's lots of changes coming about. So thanks for all you do. Hope everybody had a great holiday season. I know I did. Nobody got hurt except for Dr. Carter. Dr. Carter, during the holidays, managed to break her ankle. And so she is happy for continued virtual meeting space. As I see her, did you move the walker out of the background, Cynthia? It looks, there you go. So just wishing you a real speedy recovery.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Last but not least, Judy's not here to give me words. So I will use the words of Lyndon Baines Johnson.
God.
I shall not seek, nor shall I accept the nomination of my party to be the next chairman of the Fairfax County Park Authority. It has been 15 years of fun. I'm not leaving the board, but it's time for a change. It's time for a new voice. I'm the one that's always advocating for that. So I will lead the way and get out of the way and make the path for somebody new. We are a very dynamic organization. It was appropriate tonight that we had the cultural and natural steward presentations, because we are the stewards of the land, of the environment, of all the natural and cultural resources in the county. So it's only good. Jay's had more than a year under her leadership now, so she's kind of got her sea legs under her. We're about to hire a new equity officer, and so it's time. It really is. It's time to get ready for the next CAPRA. It's time to get ready for winning the next gold medal. And I look forward to fully participating in ensuring that that those go forward. I want to thank all my fellow board members for your confidence in me, and thank Ken Quincy because the two of us will still be here. I mean, it takes a team to make all of this happen. So I couldn't be more excited about the future. So with that, I will be a pain in the butt to somebody because I can actually take my handcuffs off now from being the Hunter Mill District Representative, and I will become your new Linwood in proposing and making sure that Hunter Mill gets its fair value of the things that it's been missing over the last 15 years. Thank you. So I will release my governor will be released in terms of input, but hopefully I've been fair. Hopefully I have not been parochial in that time. It's been great to work with you and to be your voice and to be your spokesperson. The next phase will be really, really cool. So thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jay.
Thank you, Bill. I feel like it's you're not losing a chairman, you're gaining a Hunters Mill District Park Board member.
That's one way of looking at it.
I have to say, you know, I want to start, obviously, you know, Bill's done a wonderful job, and, you know, I know that we'll talk about it more. I'm sure you guys have things to say in your individual thing. I just wanted to, before I get to Bill, just point out how, you know, just phenomenally thankful we are that every single one of you guys volunteer your time to be on this park board and your brains and really feel passionate about what it is that we do. You know, I remind everybody all the time that it's a volunteer position. Bill reminds me all the time that this is his first job, and then he happens to have a second job out there someplace that pays his bills that he has to do every once in a while. And I deal with that. It's, you know, it's tough sometimes, but I just wanted to say on behalf of, you know, staff, and we'll get into it before, just what a wonderful chairman you've been, and how much you'll be missed as a chairman in general, and how just much of a mark that you left on our agency. I know you're not leaving and going anywhere, and this is not, you know, not a eulogy, but I feel that I need to accurately express our appreciation from all of the staff at FCPA for everything that you've done. So with that, I will go to my director's matters, and then other people can wax poetically. Allison? I'm pretty quick tonight, I believe. First slide. Okay, so we have First Hike. First Hike is a program and that's a typo that I created, I apologize, to encourage our community to celebrate the new year on a Park Authority trail. So hopefully that, you know, we set out a lot of things on First Hike, encouraging people to get out there on the first day of the year, hike, take a photo, and submit their photos. This year, I believe it was something like 85 degrees. I don't know how warm it was, but it was the warmest day I've thought. We hiked with my family in t-shirts and shorts in general. So it was a wonderful, wonderful day, which is why we had about 300 residents who submitted photos showcasing the sights and scenes experience. We had 4 categories: nature and landscapes, people, pets, and wildlife. The Best in Show awards were awarded in each of the category, and 3 at-large awards were presented. The winners received FCPA gift cards or a 25-visit Rec Center Fast Pass, and the gifts were provided by the Fairfax County Park Foundation, so we thank them for that. And you can, the link here, and we'll give you the link, you can view all of the First Hike submissions. They're really wonderful photos, and we'll go through a couple of them right now. So next one. So I get to pick every year. It's like, I think I joked around with Ben when he sent me the things to look through, that it was the hardest thing that I've done all week, because we had so many phenomenal photos. But I gotta say, I'm slightly partial to streams, as that's my background. And so this one really, on the left, really drew me. in, and I really loved seeing that. So that's the Director's Choice Award. And then with the People's Choice Award, it was at Riverbend. And the Judges Award is at Lake Accotink. Next slide. This was another one of my favorites, the top left, at Burke Lake Park. I love that it was at Burke Lake Park, but not highlighting the lake, but still a phenomenal photo. People was at Eleanor C. Lawrence. Wildlife at Huntley Meadow. We can't have a wildlife category without wonderful photos in Huntley Meadow. And then pets were at Cub Run. Next slide. Okay, so I mentioned it a little bit in the CIP presentation, but we are having our groundbreaking ceremony for Mount Vernon Rec Center, and it could not come soon enough. We have done everything that we could to get to this point, and I want to thank staff for everything that they've done to keep the center open up until the last moment. But if there's ever a rec center that needs to be redone, it's Mount Vernon. So I invite all of you to come to our groundbreaking ceremony at Wednesday, January 18th at 11:30 a.m. So let us know if you would like to attend and can attend, and we'd love to have you. Next slide. Okay, summer camp registration. And let me tell you, I have a completely new perspective on summer camp registration now that I've gone through it as a parent. Trying to get my children into our wonderful camps that we provide. We had a phenomenal first day. Registration opened yesterday at 9 a.m. I was one of the thousands of parents sitting there and hitting return on the computer screen to try to get in. I gotta say, considering the sheer volume of people that came in, everything went glowingly well. I want to thank all of our staff for getting through. It's a major undertaking every year to get through that. We had 1,235 camp programs, totaling 32,000 camp participation slots. At the end of day one, we had 17,753 registrations and 6,898 wait lists. That's over $5.3 million in revenue that we did just yesterday, which is up, Mike, correct me, 60%, 50%? Weren't we at 3 last year? Are you still on there, Mike?
Yes, it's significantly higher. Yes, by magnitude of double-digit percent. Yes, absolutely.
We will, when I come back for my Director's Matter, next board will have a better view of where we are to factoring in everything. I will tell you, as I said, I was on at 9 o'clock in the morning and got my kids in half of the classes and were waitlisted for a few. And that just tells you how many parents were just so excited for everything that we have to offer all summer. And I can't thank staff enough, not just for the offerings that we provide, but making the quality of our camps and the things that we do. Oh, I just got it. Revenue up 61% over last year, just in the first day. That making the camps, people don't come back if their kids experience a bad experience, and new parents don't sign their kids up unless they've heard about the great experiences that we provide. So everything that we're talking about and having to redo rec centers, we always have to remember, like, our people are just doing a phenomenal job at serving our residents. And with that, I believe that's my last slide.
Great, thank you. Dr. Carter.
Well, I don't have anything because I'm still bouncing back from 2 breaks and 1 torn ligament. So I'm just done for. So I'm looking forward to this new year. Want to say how wonderful it has been to work with you in your capacity over the last probably almost 10 years for me, where the time goes when we're having fun. But you are phenomenal, a phenomenal leader. And I'm so glad that you're not going far away from the board, that we'll be able to duke it out for Hunter's Mill versus Franconia. Thank you.
You got it. Kyle?
Not much for me, other than saying thank you for your service to the park system and the Fairfax County residents. Glad you're not going too far.
Great. Tim?
Thank you, Bill. Apart from saying that this board has been during your tenure exceptionally well led, and it takes someone of great stature and humility, surprisingly, to step aside at the prime of their accomplishments and to create opportunities for those to come and other thoughts and input for the Park Authority. So, Bill, thank you so much, and I pass.
Thanks, Tim. Jim?
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I won't spend a whole lot of words, but I will just say to you, Bill, in terms of my view of you as a total person, and I'll sum it up in one word. You are a gem. I appreciate your dedication. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ken?
What can I say? Bill, it's been a great pleasure over the years. I think we came on approximately the same time. So the experience has been nothing but positive. And for me, as for the community, for the Park Authority, and we had a lot of fun along the way too. So I applaud you for all you've done, and I'll applaud you ahead of time for all you're going to do for Hunter Mill. And I'm sure it won't be just for Hunter Mill, it will be for the entire Park Authority. So you won't be going away, which is good, because your expertise is valuable over the years. And we lost a number of staff this past year, but those that I've met that have come in as replacements are top notch. So we're lucky in that regard that we're able to continue on as a gold medal organization. The one thing I do want to mention is that, and this is very important, you made a point to get Linwood home.
I did.
And that was great. But anyway, I think the Park Authority had a very successful 2022, thanks to the staff and the board. And I look forward to an equally, if not more successful 2023.
Thank you, sir. Linwood?
I was going to invite everybody to the groundbreaking, but that's already been done tonight. I guess I'll re-invite everybody next Wednesday, 11:30 in the morning. Hope to see you all there. I'm extremely excited that we are finally rocking and rolling on this thing. Want to take the opportunity to thank all the staff for the years and years of work that has got us to this place. And only thing I'm going to be more excited about than this in a while than this groundbreaking tomorrow will be the excitement when we do the ribbon cutting for it when it's done. Just can't wait, and hope to see everybody there at that point. Also, I will say I was recently reappointed, as a couple others of us were. So I plan on being here 4 more years, and I do want to say that it is my sincere hope and wish that I get to attend the Audrey Moore groundbreaking and at least one more rec center, and that could even include a rec center in Hunter Mill, Bill. But we need to roll on these rec centers, and I want you to know, with it all behind me, the hard work done, the commitments done, it's rolling. I'm as committed as ever to everyone else's rec centers also. And Bill, I'll save my comments till 2 more weeks, because you're still for chairman for 2 more weeks. But you also know that I've already had a personal conversation with you, and it'll be nothing but gratitude in my public comments next month.
Thank you, Linwood. Faisal.
So if this was any other night, I wasn't gonna talk because of my situation, but this is too important to miss out on. And all I can say, Bill, is thank you for your tremendous leadership. What you've done over the years for the Park Authority and for the county overall, running this thing like a well-oiled machine. And I don't know how you did it. You made it look so easy, day in, day out. It certainly from distance, it didn't look that you're doing much, but only God knows what you were doing. Like Jay said, that this is your first job and paying your bills is your second job. So that certainly reflected in the overall achievements that we did. Having said that, I'm just trying to ration my stamina right now. So thank you for your tremendous leadership. And I think we wholeheartedly cannot thank you enough for what you've done, but I'm really, really happy and excited that treasurers like you and Ken are still going to be around for the new leadership to work with. And I'm equally excited and optimistic for a future like what we have done in the past 15 years. Thank
you, sir. Michael.
So I'm not gonna, I mean, it's not like you're leaving, so I don't want to do this all in past tense. And I certainly believe that anybody who lives in Hunter Mill would probably feel that they have not been ill-served or ill-funded or ill-resourced while you've been chairman. So I think you have been fighting very hard for the county and Hunter Mill for the past years. I think that the fact is that you've been an important partner, I think, to everybody here. I think that you have been a sounding board. You have certainly put up with me far more than any or most sane and rational people would want to, which I truly appreciate. You and I have and I hope we'll continue to have many conversations that have nothing to do with parks. And hopefully you will continue to recommend good reading material to me as well. Thank you for all that you've done. I look forward to seeing what it means that you're going to fight harder for Hunter Mill in this process, and what that.
He lost it.
Are you there?
Yep.
Sorry, of course my AirPod died just right there.
Of course.
But thank you for all the support for the community. Thank you for all you've done. Appreciate it. And all the things that are going on. I look forward to working with you on projects in the future. I also think that it's important to note that there have been times when some of the things around the Park Authority have driven me crazy, and you have kept me and I think other folks sane and focused. So thank you for that as well.
You're welcome. Maggie.
Thank you, Bill. First, I just want to go back and say, whenever I see such fabulous presentations like what we saw during the Resource Management Committee, it just reminds me of how privileged I am to be on this board for such a fabulous and outstanding organization. Everybody in the staff does such a great job on every single thing. It's such a pleasure to represent this organization. And Bill, you're the only chairman I've known on this board, but the two things that I want to thank you for are getting us through some pretty tough decisions occasionally, and also making it fun. And when the pandemic started and we had to go to virtual, it was seamless. We all knew each other. We got along. It went really, really well. And I think that's a testament to your leadership. So I too am glad that you're still going to be around. And Ken, we need you. And I look forward to a wonderful year in 2023, working with all of you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right. With that, it's probably dinner time for most of you. Thank you for everything that you do. And with that, we are adjourned. Have a great week, guys.
You
You too.